You were trying to jinx it. We're live.
Thank you, Mrs. DeGraff. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Mrs. Perkins, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our board meeting today. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I second that. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meetings.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from our previous meetings.
And Madam Chair, I second that motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We'll move right along to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Exciting times. The first month of school is always super duper exciting. A lot of things going on. Get right into it. Earlier this week, I met with our supervisors, and they all indicated also that great start to the school year. You know, typical things that come up anytime you're in a school year. One of the challenges we had, and I'll talk about the great things that we were able to get to with our maintenance department being down a little bit with our employees during the summer, and also some different situations that came up with construction materials being held back, with everything that's hard to get to. It's been amazing that we've been able to get school started on time in the first couple of weeks, and just super excited about the things that are going on. Second bullet, we do have a mental health in service scheduled for tomorrow with our professional day. That will start at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'll take the first half hour and talk about our safe school trainings for our employees, and some other safety procedures with the employees. And then at 8:30 to 11 o'clock, Mr. DeGraw, our clinician, will share some resources with our teachers. We're going to talk about mental health, well-being, suicide awareness, and suicide prevention, just different things that we can start on to. Again, this isn't going to be all encompassing, but it will be a start. And we have him scheduled again to come back in January, at the January in service for that. Just an update with PA meetings. We did have a question that came out on social media that I addressed during our PA meeting about board elections. There's a question that came up was, is it the school district's responsibility to advertise upcoming elections? And honestly, when that question came up, I didn't know if it was really us or not that needed to. As we looked into it, the county clerk is the one responsible for those elections. We discussed the difference between a vacancy and a re-election, where we don't have a vacancy right now. I know in the past, if a board member said, I'm not going to rerun, I'm not putting my application in, we recognize that that's a vacancy. And I think as a common courtesy at that time, we would as a board say, just so you know, there's a vacancy. That wasn't the case with this one. This was a re-election, and that's where it falls back to the county clerk. But what we will do is during our annual meeting, we will be more clear on the board members who are here, how many years you have been in on your term, and then highlight at that time in the annual meeting in January if it's a re-election. So that would be something that any of our patrons that are curious about that, they'll be able to get that information there. Along that as well, when Mrs. Hall and Julie heard about this as well, previously on our old website, we did have a list of the terms. For some reason, that one didn't get transferred over, and we quickly put that up. And so from that question, we were able to help get that answer out, and it went well. Transportation update, the new bus update. Again, all of the things that get pushed back in production, we're still waiting on the driver air conditioning to be put into it. So the bus is in Utah, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that it will be here by the end of October. I know it's like initially, they thought it was gonna be here, but just everything on production lines, everything just got pushed back. We do have a wheelchair bus, a new student that did move into our district requiring that type of service. We were fortunate to be able to get a bus that Bonneville District gave to Malad, that Malad now gave to us. That bus has been here. Mr. Pincock's been able to take the side, a name off, be able to put our name on it. As one final maintenance overview to go on and should be able to go. We are going to be needing a driver. We've always been looking for drivers, so we'll look around in the community and see if we can find somebody that might be able to help take that route.
So is that just for one student?
So it would be for
Or
just
pick
one
up other
student,
kids?
but it could pick up other kids. It's not it's kind of a medium-sized bus. It's not as long as the others and it's not as short as the little shorties. And so there could be other students that ride on that. And that's one that Mr. Pincock, he'll look at and see if he might be able to alleviate some of the pressure off. One bus comes from Hamer. It has quite a few kids on it. The other day, the closest 60 kids come into school on it. So we might be able to alleviate some of the stress off that other bus with this. Technology, the fiber optic wires and the new cameras in the hallways are in, and they are great. They are really good quality. And right now, our administrators do have access to be able to view the cameras. I have on my computer and also on my cell phone, the ability to look at any camera hallway right now. And that's something that previously we would have had to have gone to the actual office to have seen that. And so it's something that we have there for safety, and it's just part of that fiber optic wires that Mr. Weeks was able to get through the E-rate grant. That's going to really bless our district for quite a long time. So
that's done.
it's in. Yep, it's in. We still have our old outside cameras on, and so but we're waiting on the new ones to come in. And they, again, you can hear me saying back order every time. I hope that's not a new thing with all the bond projects coming up and everything's on back order. But the cameras are on back order for outside, but we don't want to get a lesser quality camera. These are the cameras that really can zoom in. I know on my previous school, we had some outside cameras where there was some vehicles we were trying to get license plate numbers on, and I couldn't because of the camera system. But these camera systems will be able to get in and see all of that. They're really high tech. And so in the meantime, we still have our outside cameras, but they're the older ones. And those will stay in place. We'll keep those up and going. And then when the new ones come in, we'll take that old system completely out. Maintenance and grounds custodial. Dean Erickson has started working for us part-time. He's already was hired as a bus driver. And we've asked him to come and work for 3.5 hours each day just to help with the projects. And it's been awesome. Mr. Soderquist has been really needing some extra help to get projects, and projects are starting to just get done now. Because we have that, he comes in, if he has a bus run, he'll come in after school sometimes. And so it's just been great. One of the projects that Dean was able to help Mr. Soderquist, you can see the picture on so we have new lighting added around the parking lot of the main gym. That's something that we've noticed that the lighting there is just really, really dark. And so these light systems were, when we first got the gym, it came with the original one, and it was a lesser quality LED. It was back in '96. That's not yesterday, right? But those lights, they weren't bright. And I even noticed that after some of the basketball games and the first football game, thinking, wow, it is dark out here. This is dangerous. We need to get this changed. We had a couple lights that were out in the parking lot. As soon as I let Mr. Soderquist know about it, he was able to go in. There was some in the system, somebody can there's a breaker box with the outside lights that just got tripped, so he was able to get that fixed right away. But then we went and bought 6 new outdoor LED lights, and these are extremely bright. And so he saw them this morning when he got here to work. I'm gonna really get to see him tonight after the volleyball game. But hopefully this brightens up our parking lot, just increases safety and awareness on that. The lunchroom remodel, here's some pictures of the lunchroom remodel. The one on the left is the washing system, and this table winds all the way around. And so these systems here, we have to hit, with Mr. Soderquist and Mrs. Ward. Mrs. Ward has written grants for a majority of these projects. And so they would come in as part of the grants, and then Larry will come in and get them put in there. And those of you that have ever remodeled, I haven't, but I've heard my brother say this, it's easier to build new than go in and remodel, because you have to deal with all of the different things that are built. And with our lunchroom, not everything is completely square and straight. It's one that a community helped build. And so he was a little worried about some of the measurements on these things, and guess what? It fits. Of course it does. Mr. Soderquist does such a great job with preciseness and being able to really take the pride in doing that. But
Did they have to rewire it?
they didn't really have to rewire everything. There was a couple plumbing places that with sinks that they needed to move, some things with some of the garbage disposals, but there's, you see a new dishwashing machine here. The bottom right one is our sink that has the 3 different wash bins, which now brings us back up to code. And this prep area here, and so it's really looking nice. Yet, have a chance to go in there. The facility looks really, really good. Next one is just the art room remodel. That's one of our classrooms. Doesn't that look nice?
It's wonderful.
And so the floor was going to be polished concrete, but again, one of the surprise things that came up was when we were polishing the concrete, the rebar was too close and the rebar came out. So it got pushed back.
So is that tile on the
It is a laminate tile.
laminate tile?
Mhm. And we can't see there's the new shelves. Off here to the left, there's like a big long blue shelf or blue table. Looks really, really nice. That was fabricated. And back over here, that's where the old sink was from the lunchroom. So
Oh,
able to repurpose that, and looks really, really nice. I know what is it? Ms. Sweeter is really, really pleased with that. So the next one is the elementary teacher workroom. That this is the polished concrete. We also had another hang up on that one where the glue in the tile had some asbestos, so we hired the company to come in and remove it appropriate way. So it's almost like everything we tried to do this summer had some type of we're not going to make it easy. So I can't say enough with our supervisors working together, between Mr. Weeks with technology coming in and running wire with the different groups, and Mr. Soderquist with the remodels, our custodians going through and cleaning out, Mrs. Ward in the lunchroom, just fabulous. And it was just, they're doing wonderful things. A couple other things with our lunchroom with food services, if you saw those pictures from the remodels, there's a new point of sale at the lunch. Even though it isn't really needed this year because it's free. The lunches are free for all students, so they're not really using this as a way to receive money. I guess it does for teachers and such that pay. So My School Bucks is an online payment. I know right now we have an online payment system through our website of EdLeo. We know that one has a few quirks in it. We're recognizing that. So we're going to finish out the year with that. Would you agree, Mrs. DeGraw? Is quirk's the right word, or?
It has some special aspects.
Yeah, it's just not as user friendly as we would like, and we recognize that our current one is not the best. I've paid for my kids' athletic passes. I wouldn't try it, and I had Mrs. Mays run it through. It works, but I can see that it's not easy to do at home. Some school districts are using My School Bucks as all of their online payment options. Something that we could explore. I'm not sure where we're gonna go on it, but it's something to explore. Of course, we always want things that are user-friendly and fit, and if things aren't, then we recognize that and we make a change, but we'll see. We'll get through this year with our current one and see how the lunch service is like that. Fresh fruit and vegetable grant was also given. Again, Mrs. Ward doing awesome. There's 18,000 for the Territon campus and 3,000 for the students up in Hamer, and kids will be able to continue with that. And another thing that I didn't put on here, just a shout out for Mrs. Ward. The food vendors are having difficulty getting food in, and it's just so difficult. And we have different vendors that are dropping the different co-ops with our food services. But she was worried about this last year, and she went in and she bought extra. And so we have enough to get us through whatever we need to for the next school year. And so she just had that intuition and foresight to be able to go in there and do that. So she's not hoarding, she's just just being prepared. And so she's just on top of it with knowing what the commodities are at, understanding the federal, regulations and things coming in. And that's part of it where, as a district, we've supported her to be able to go and be a regional representative at the federal level for the food services. Some people would look at that and say, why do you want your employees to leave? But the knowledge and things that she has from that really blesses what we're doing here. So just, again, can't say enough about our supervisors, everything they're doing. We've shown pictures of these in the past, but here's just another example of the touchscreen monitors that are in. Some teachers have them on wheels on the carts, kind of like the one we have here in the boardroom. Others have them put in. So they're being well used as I go throughout the district, and the teachers are using them daily. Parking lot safety, one thing that Mr. Johnston has implemented over at the elementary, and I jump in and help him because I used to do this at my old school, so it's just kind of a fun way to start the day is to be able to go out in the parking lot. What we've really appreciated is here at the Territon campus, when the kids are dropped off at the elementary, we just ask that parents pull forward as far as they can up to past the tree if they can to drop kids off. We have a couple times, and it's not a lot, where the cars are backed out on the highway, just as they're all trying to come in with a little bit of a bottleneck. And so as we've started to do this, it's relieved that the bottlenecks have gone down. We're able to make sure when cars that come in and park and backing up, just to help out with that. So
The school buses, why do we have so many cars?
Because the parents want to haul
You have-
their own kids.
you
to
have
school.
20% of this. A couple of things. A lot of the kids that get dropped off are with older siblings that are driving anyway, who need a car for after practice. So when I'm watching the high school kids that are dropping off their siblings, those kids usually have an after school practice. And so it's just convenience for that. We still have quite a few kids that are riding the bus, but then as I'm just kind of thinking through my mind, the kids are dropping them off. The other ones would be kids from out of district where we don't have bus services for. And so then that's a majority of it, where we have 20% of our kids out of district. We'll have some parent traffic, but I think this has helped alleviate it quite a bit. A couple other highlights. Mr. Harrelson had a 9/11 presentation, K through 6, the 7th and 8th grade. The VFW came over and did a flag ceremony for the 4th grade on flag etiquette. The junior high had a fun pep rally where they were, during homecoming. The junior high cheerleading team went up and did a cheer, a little. I don't know if they did the dance. They danced at the halftime with the high school. Extracurricular activities. We had the clubs. FFA went to the Eastern Idaho State Fair, Blackfoot. I believe I had they took 7 students to the Eastern Idaho Fair last week. 4 were horse judging and they placed 13th overall, and 3 were on the livestock judging team. So that was always fun. I liked FFA when I was in school. Homecoming, what a great week for homecoming. On Friday of homecoming, the tradition is to have service projects. Here's some pictures of the service projects. We had roadside cleanup, along the highway, pulling weeds, cleaning up debris around the buildings, cutting sod around the softball field, sweeping the sidewalks, panther paws being repainted. Just the facilities looked great, and the students were able to jump in and help out. And after that, they had Panther Olympics in the gym, then a barbecue with the students. That evening, the homecoming game was great. You know, the JV played tough. It's great to have the varsity win. Had a wonderful flag ceremony that Pam Smith has choreographed the last 2 years and pulled it off flawlessly. It's a great show by the community. Our booster club is selling Panther gear at the games. It's the little kids came and sang the school song before the start. We have a pep band that's coming out, you know, like what else around it? We have a lot of really good things that are going on in the schools. And so it was just a fun week. Here's a picture just because it's the superintendent report, Mike, and as I was there doing that. So I asked my son Shad to come and ref the Powder Puff game with me because I didn't want to have to run and I wanted some young legs. But here's a picture of him getting run over on the first play. I think he was like, no, what did I do that? I shouldn't have done that one. So that was just fun.
At school or at night?
It was at night. That one was on Monday night. And, you know, Mr. Hadley's comment was that was the best sportsmanship that the girls had. I know when I talked with my sister when she played, she said, we were looking to be mean and get some of the, you know, can't tell you which sister. Okay, I'll let you decide have two. Which one was meaner? I don't know. But it was just a great week, good turnout. Helped by, you know, so many different people to thank, not only just staff members, but Mr. Hadley and his student council, but countless staff members that would jump in and help out, countless members of the community, booster club. You know, you see that out on the game day flags that we have outside in front of the school here. Just some fun school spirit. You can feel it starting to build, some good things that are happening, and we want to keep that momentum going. Those flags, our C team coach Kip Blanchard was the one that did those flags. He's donated so many different things to the different programs with t-shirts. Other patron on our Education Foundation committee, Travis Johnson, he has his t-shirt company and he threw shirts out at the halftime. You know, there's just good community, just a great community that we're in, a lot of really good support, a lot of positive things. Coming up, we have harvest break starting a week from, you know, we're back in school next week, but then on the 27th, we'll start it for 2 weeks. Parent teacher conference will be that Monday, the 27th. That'll be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just look for parents, look for a note from your teachers. Some of them are going to be just drop in whenever you can. Others might send out a note and say, please come during this time. Well, just depends on what the teachers are wanting. Tomorrow we do have our Teacher Professional Day. I mentioned that we will have our mental health training in the morning. A couple other things that we'll be working on. The principals are working with the teachers. Our Otis learning management system. Right now, we don't know how the parent login. We've heard from some parents that it's difficult to log in. We have calls into Otis to work through this, but our teachers and students are able to log in to that. So I guess if you're a parent out there and you want to check your students' grades and you can't log in with yourself, you might want to just ask your student to log in for now. But we're looking into that problem and looking how to help with that. And Mrs. Grau, we need to tap the screen on that one. So. Then another thing that the teachers will be working through is communication about blended learning. What we're going to do with it. So I know I can talk a lot about the positive things that are going on, you guys. And maybe you might have to give me a time limit next time on the superintendent report, Madam Chair, but this is a great school. This is a lot of really good things going on. So thank you for letting me share that. Any other questions or about other things going on in the district the board has for me?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Broad, do we have any public comment sheets? Nope. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Before we open for a motion,
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda, the financials and the personnel.
is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment just on personnel where we did have some personnel changes this last week, just as a point of information for patrons. So we did have a change in our business teacher that the board is aware of through our executive sessions. And the district has elected to keep that position within the district. And we have asked Mr. Weeks, our technology specialist, to teach 2 classes this trimester of computer courses. And then Dina Stedman, who is our EMT teacher under the CTE department, will help with the input tech. And that will be our plan to continue for the business education for this year. And so I just wanted to have that as a point of information for individuals that we've hired, Dina Stedman and Jody Weeks, and extended their contracts for that position.
Thank you. Action items, bus 09. Some first.
All right. So as per board policy, any purchase over $5,000 needs to be approved or ratified by the school district. And through our financial audits, these will be looked at. So that's why this one is coming up. You can see that the 5,280, at least it wasn't 5,030 cents or something. At least it was 280. And this was for the ERG coolers with bus 09 and the labor. So that's all we need to have presented to the board for this.
I'm glad they had parts to be able to fix it.
Before we open for a motion,
Yeah, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve that bus 09 repair bill that was for over $5,000.
there's a second.
I second that.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Agreement for municipal advisory services.
All right, we have a couple of different services that are available to us. And the first one on this, well, the 2 that we have, throughout the bond process, our district has received financial and legal support from Zions Financial and from Skinner Fawcett. These are 2 groups that have helped with all of our previous bonds, even the ones before I was superintendent. And they reached out just to say we need to reapprove those advisory service agreements. And so both of these are just the agreements to continue receiving the services. They want to update their agreements with the district. I've reviewed the contents with them. They're consistent with what we've done with the fees in the past and then with them. So the first one is just the advisory agreement with Zion's Public Finance. And this tells us, or this agreement will just verify that Zion's is our financial advisor. They'll help us through all the different things with it. Pretty consistent with anything else on when it comes down to the fees. A lot of times the fees are free until the bond passes. And so then that's just regular stuff. There's nothing new from anything on this. So, go ahead.
So they've been working with us since we started the last bond.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, this is
All
just
that work
updated.
was just
Yeah,
nothing, and now
exactly.
is it retroactive or is it
No.
starting?
No, it starts now. And what this, the last one for Zion's was done in 1995.
Oh, outdated.
It's a little bit out. It's a little bit outdated. And so it just comes in to make sure that we're aware of what their services are they're considered our financial advisor when it comes to bonds and levies. And it just makes it so when we do, after we, get the process with this bond completed, we're gonna be able to work with them to say, how do we pay it off the best way? What's the best way to do this? What if we refinanced it this way? They just give us that input and help us decide what's best financially for the district. I've been impressed with Christian as he's come in and met with me as a new superintendent and, shared different things. He really explains things in a way that I can understand, which is not always easy because sometimes
But how long does this agreement go?
there's not an ending date on it.
It's just this.
It does state that at any point in time, we can end
Exactly,
our
60.
agreement.
So we'll keep this, like the one from 1995 is still in effect until this new one can be completed. But
Until the bond is through.
yeah, but at any time, if we wanted to explore a different financial advisor, we could, in writing, let them know 60 days. There's not a penalty to get out or change of luck. So that's the first one as part of that service package. The second one would be for the bond and legal services agreement. Now, bonds, I guess bond attorneys, there are not very many bond attorneys in Idaho. It's a specialized group of people because of all the different bond rules. Like for example, our legal counsel that we have for the district, I'm able to use that group for counsel on levies or the plant facility, but the lawyer that we use now doesn't do bonds. So that just kind of just go through the overview that bond attorneys are different, and so just specialized. And so Skinner Fawcett is the one that we went through last time, and this is just a letter saying that they're willing to enter into the agreement with us as well. And
Where are they from?
Boise.
Boise. Okay.
So this one does disclose with the bond and all the different things that come in. The bond lawyers need to check all of the process, make sure we're following it, make sure that everything's been into the county, everything's in place, the bank's following everything. And so there is a charge after the bond is passed for those services that's included in here, but it's similar to what it was last time. Like that.
How much was that last cost? The first.
The first one, it depends on the size of the bond with Zion's. And so with all of it, it's gonna be about $40,000 between the two. With everything, and that's pretty consistent. I think no, that's what he said with, I don't know what it was when we did it before, but there was another district that had about a $2 million bond that just passed, and ours is less than that. So it's consistent. So the bond lawyer would be 18,000, and the other bond part would be up to 2.
And does that come out of the bond money?
Yeah. So there's several options with the bond money. You can either come out of it or it's rolled into the top. And so what he'll look at, when I say he, Christian will look into that, and we'll see the best. Right now, it's looking like the best way to do it is to roll it into the bond. So it's not, so we'll still have 1.5 full projects, but with the savings on everything else. The next couple months, we're going to go over the details on things. Interest rates are a couple of the quick things on.
Ridiculously low.
Yeah, I'll go into more of the bond when I talk about the official intent resolution, because that's the second one's on the bond part, but go over the process with that. But right now, just to finish up this action item, those would be the 2 municipal services or advisory services that we're looking to enter into.
Will the floor be open for a motion to approve the agreement then?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the advisory services proposal from Science Public, Financial, and Skinner Fawcett LLP.
For a second,
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
is there any discussion or questions for Mr. Williams? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The official intent resolution.
So this one, an official intent resolution is part of the bond, and I was talking about the timetable of after the bond is passed and then what takes place next. So there's we can start that process now of acquiring the bond funds. And there's a calendar that has all the different steps outlined. And what it's looking like is the bond process isn't going to be finalized until the end of October. So the question is, can the district start working on projects? Through an official intent resolution, that gives us the ability to start on projects, but also 60 days prior to this decision. And so right now is when we put in the bond, safety, different things, like right now, outdoor things like the lights we just put around the gym. I'm not saying I could go from the bond, but that's an outside facility thing that could be used and offset with this bond money. It just gives us flexibility to start the projects. The 1.5 from this bond has to be spent in 3 years. If it's not spent in 3 years, then it just has to go back in and pay it off. Because you can't save bond money for anything else but bond purposes and the things that we talked about. So that's one thing what this official intent resolution looks like.
So can you send out bids during this
Yes.
60-day
Yeah.
time?
And
We
so
probably have started, haven't we?
so we can start sending out bids and looking at the different projects. And we're going to want to, even if we can't get to projects this fall, we're gonna want to set them up now
Yeah.
for
Get
next
them on
spring
work, on the work schedule.
and get them rolling. And so this resolution allows us to do that. And if somebody could come right now, we want to take advantage of that.
Yes.
Like if somebody could come in during harvest to hit something on one of these projects, we wouldn't want to say, well, we have to wait till the end of October. It just gives us the
So
flexibility.
this waiting period that we have, that's just a law that people can try to challenge.
Yes, yeah,
Time.
yeah.
To leave them to do that.
That's part of the thing is because if there wanted to be a challenge, somebody could come back and say, the election was rigged or this or that, or I want to recount.
So
That just gives them the time. That's where the bond lawyer comes in to make sure that we have everything ready, because he would defend that. If that came up, he would come in and defend the process.
So it's not like, go ahead and do some things we're not gonna be stuck.
Correct. Yep.
Is there any further discussion on the resolution? If not, the floor will be open for a motion.
Yeah, but Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the official intent resolution.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Our continuous improvement plan.
Okay. Let's pull up the action item. So as per Idaho Code 33-320, there is a requirement for a continuous improvement plan, which our district has had with the last 2 years. You can see in there that by October 1st, it needs to be put or sent to the State Board of Education and then submitted to on our 11th website. And so this year I've combined our district's continuous improvement plan and strategic plan. And I've looked in Idaho Code. Sometimes I see these plans used interchangeably. In the early part of, the 90s, 2000s, the words were strategic plan. And then as code changed and the career ladder came in and they wanted other things to make sure that districts, when I say the legislature wanted to indicate what needed to be in the plan. The continuous improvement plan came about with that. So there's different metrics and things that they want us to look at. And so we have the continuous improvement plan. We reviewed it briefly, at least the draft portion of it in July. and have been working on it, getting it ready to go for this meeting. Again, our continuous improvement plan and strategic plan are both working documents. So even though it might not be perfect right now, the board is reviewing it, we're aware of our goals, and we're moving forward with those. So here's the example of our continuous improvement and strategic plan. And then it also includes narrative, metrics, and staff performance. These are all different things. Everything that I have in here is a requirement, with the exception of the strategic plan goals that we have. So the continuous improvement plan requires a mission and vision statement, which I love our mission and vision statement. It was a collaborative effort
Was that really fun?
with our teachers when we were discussing what do we want to be? What do we want to accomplish? What do we want to do with that? And it kind of does the who, what, where, and where we're going, the why, the who, what, why. Who are we? We are a small school. We want to offer big opportunities for the kids. And why are we here? Education really is that thing that can provide endless possibilities for individuals. And that's what we want to do. We want our staff and students to be respectful, responsible, and ready. And so this part of the mission and vision is continuing. This paragraph explains how we are, going to give big opportunities in a small school. What our beliefs are, focusing on student learning with the PLCs. This is where people say, well, why do you sometimes focus on our standards-based grading? Why are you trying to push to go to this learning model? This is the reason why, because it's not just about grades, it's about student learning. It's not just jumping through a hoop of what was my grade? What do I need to do to get extra credit? No, what do I need to learn? And that's the conversations that we want to move towards.
Excuse me, but have we thought any more about, have we trained every teacher in PLC?
So many of our teachers have been to PLC conferences. I know with our CSI up junior high this summer, we had an online training. I believe we had 8 to 10 teachers come to it. I would say a majority of our teachers have been. I'd say probably 70% of our teachers have been to some type of PLC type conference. Those are things that we will want to continue. Even those that have been, it's great to go back, because it's you come at it with a different viewpoint, where the first time you go, maybe I'm just learning and say, wow, this is new. Now that we're here and we try it, and PLC doesn't mean a perfect process. PLC means that we are going to dig in and ask those questions. What do we want our students to learn? Are we really focusing on standards? How do we know they've learned it?
What do we do?
What if we do if they don't? Mr. Davis has asked Mr. Guimar and a couple other teachers, I think Mr. Gore and Mr. Packer, and they're putting together a video for the students and teachers to just help train kids. This is when we say standards-based, this is what we mean by that. And I can't wait to see the video. I was watching the video they were making over at the school. And so we are touching on it. But like I've mentioned before, these are processes. It's not like flipping a light switch on and saying, boom, now we're automatically a perfect PLC school, or boom, now we're automatically teaching and in this process. It's one of the things that, there's some teachers that are really grasping onto it, some that need a little bit more training in it. But I don't have anybody that's coming out and saying, I'm going to flat out resist this. They're open to it as well. And so that's the second part describes the community involvement with this plan. And through our student council groups, parent surveys, our PA meetings, these work meetings, everything that comes, whether or not people realize it, I gather the information and I listen. And does that mean that somebody says I want to come in and have a 4-week potato harvest? That doesn't mean I automatically have to do it just because they're sharing something. But it's something that somebody could say, what about this? Why are we doing that? Like some of the questions that we have that we've had from a parent calling in and saying, Otis isn't working for me right now. We need to know those things. We need to know where we can get better. And that's what the whole purpose of these plans are. But we're not afraid to hear those questions or because they're not really critiques, we just need to help people know where we're moving. So these are the different groups that help contribute to these. Then I've included our strategic plan goals. This is where I've combined the two plans, where these were the four main areas as a school board that we want to make sure that our strategies and key actions are in place. And these are things that are working ones that we can update. I will update them this after, even after we approve the plan today, we'll continue to do that, where one is the quality teaching and learning, the fiscal responsibility, school environment and safety, and the community relations and communications. And, as I mentioned in my superintendent report for this month, the positive relationships, connections, things are moving positively. Are there times where there's misunderstandings? Are there times going to be when somebody misunderstands communication one way or another? Absolutely. We live in a community. You show me one family that doesn't have sometimes a disagreement, or somebody's upset at somebody. It's going to happen. The real key is how quickly can we get over those? How quickly can we move on from it and not let that become the issue? And that's one thing that I know that as a school board, when I first came in and we had the Brene Brown book study, like talking about what a rumble is, how do we really have that conversation? How do we stay open? How do we not get offended when things don't go our way? Our board is really modeling that. Our teachers are moving in that direction, and our community is moving in that direction. It's one of those things that we can't get caught up on. You didn't do this perfectly, or I was offended because this happened. At the end of the day, you look at the goals that we have in our plan, all of us want what's best for kids. That's why we're here. That's why you guys volunteer. That's why people show up to these meetings in droves, because we want what's best for kids. And we're seeing that in our community. And so these are just the different things that we've done. And again, we'll keep, attracting, recruiting, retaining high quality employees, doing the very best that we can with that. Fiscal responsibility, we're with this process that we have with our online board format, we are as transparent as we could ever be with anything. School environment and safety, you can see the same ones that we have. The next part are metrics. The metrics these are the ones required by the State Board of Education that we look at. The metrics are goals, not necessarily the results. One of the highlights that I wanted to look at, and this is kind of a new one, some highlight right there. So since the academic measures for teachers are considered a part of the evaluation process, academic data tracked in these plans should follow the parameters of Idaho Code 33518 regarding the right to privacy. So that means that district measures that we put in these types of plans, they shouldn't highlight one teacher. So they have an effect size or an N size of less than 5. So that means, which is going to be tricky because I'm going to pull one of these up here, and they ask us to look at 6th grade and 8th grade. So on one hand, they're giving us a requirement that doesn't follow this. This is where one part of code says you must report on this, where this other code says you shouldn't report on it. That just happens when you have a bajillion laws that you're trying to follow. You probably don't look at that. So when we look at these metrics, we look at last year's 2021. This is what we were wanting to accomplish. We were wanting to accomplish 51%, 57%. This is not applicable because this is a new one where they also have a growth measure on the ISAT. I didn't know they had that on there, but I guess they do, or they've included that. So last year we were hoping that 51% of our students in math ISAT hit 51%. It was a lot lower than that. The goal that I put on here is about 7 to 10 points roughly higher than what it was. So we were in 32% when it came to that area. When it came to ELA, again, our it was about 44%. I probably could have put that one a little bit higher, but it's just a goal. We want to see where we're at with ELA. One thing that was a highlight in this area when it came to the 6th grade ELA, I said we don't want to have an effect size, but we only have a couple 6th grade teachers. We were actually above the state average on our ELA 6th grade. So some of our areas were low. We know that math is an area of concern in the middle junior high area. We have some professional development that I wasn't going to touch on today. I'll touch on next month that Mrs. Bell's putting together, and just some different changes and approaches that we're having. So it's important that we look at these, but also not let this be the be all end all. And that's the only caution that I would have to the board. We want to keep an eye on this, but we also don't want to be chasing a test score, if that makes sense. Because we could prove that the test scores are great, but not really have deep learning. There's not always a correlation, because part of it is also a one-time shot, a one-time test. And I know on the ELA portion of this last grade, because the teachers had one of those come to reasoning meetings after it happened, the students didn't take it as seriously as they could have on the one test. And so it's just and the way we know that is because there was some not discipline, but just off task talking. You could just tell that at that time the students weren't focused and on task during that test.
So that's a double-edged sword. If you try to tell them how important it is, they may get nervous or.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's also,
you try not to make it a big deal, so they'll do
and
well.
it's trying to find that balance, because we consider this on the teacher evaluation, but I don't want this to be the out front measure, because then you have a teacher who's going every single day. My job depends on whether these kids can pass this test.
Yeah.
And how unfair is that? I'm like, I should ask parents of teenagers, okay, your job depends on whether your teenager is going to be respectful today. Or your job is going to be whether or not your teenager is going to listen to you today.
Yeah.
Like, just because they come to school doesn't mean they automatically, it's just one of those things that our teachers are doing a great job. But like I said, on this one with the ISAT, our highlight really was our 6th grade ELA was quite high. 8th grade ELA was a little bit lower than the state average, but it doesn't ask for 7th grade. 7th grade was a lot higher. So you could just tell that the one class, just for whatever reason, was a little bit lower. But again, we don't want to over focus on the results. The next section, this one's talking about the IRI with the this would be our I station. These are just our goals. We want our students to hit this high. Some of our classes hit it, some of them didn't. But again, it's one of those things where this isn't the format to come in and say, oh, our 1st grade teachers didn't get it. These are the goals that we're going to. If board members want to at a different time, definitely can share that, but our teachers know, because our administrators know. Mr. Johnson holds data meetings with the teachers, and they're reviewing this data individually in their classrooms. And so they use that data then to put the kids into intervention groups. But these are reasonable goals for right now based on our past experiences, because we're still trying to shoot for these scores. We haven't quite got them yet with the current stuff. It'd be nice this next year, if we're way higher, when we go to 22, 23, I'd like to see us be able to bump those up. And then that kind of tells us that we're moving in the right direction, at least from these metrics. This is what the state required us to have. We get a choice on the other one. This is our K-4 performance-based assessments. This is our 95% program. And because of the N size, we are combining grades K-4. Some of these grade levels have a lot higher percentage than others. And we're shooting for 75% this next year. Last year, we were hoping for 73%. We got 71%, which is pretty close with that. But we see a lot of progress, and part of it was we're still digging out of a hole from the COVID April and May time where we weren't in school. And so we have a good plan in place. Again, like I said, our administration, Mr. Johnson, the elementary level, he's right on top of this. The teachers are coming in, they've already had a data meeting to look at the data.
And he realistically thinks we can do the
Yes.
75.
Yeah, I do too.
Good.
I do too. It's just, last year was year one with a new curriculum, new processes, and this year it's gonna be tightened up a little bit more now that Mr. Johnson is the principal, because now he has the ability to have those data meetings the way he wants them to be. Which, you know, going back, that's not a slam on the other administrator. It's just that when you have an administrator that's trying to go from kindergarten through 8th grade, that's a huge amount. And now Mr. Johnson's gonna be able to just, okay, I can target in on this.
Well, he has a background in it too.
Yep.
So he has an expectation.
Yes,
This is what I know of this program. This is what I.
and this is what you need to do.
achieve. So,
And so I really do. I think we're gonna hit it this year. The next one is college and career advising. We didn't have any students graduate with a CTE certificate or associate's degree. As I talked with Mr. Demar, we have 7 or 8 kids in the EMT class. We're hoping at least 5 of those pass that EMT class, and they'll be able to get that. Couple kids are close on associate amounts of credits, but it's still something that we're working towards. The middle part just talks about the learning plans that the students create, and Mr. Guimar reviews those. We have a goal to get the kids into the classes. Mr. Guimar was talking to me yesterday about some of the ideas he had to just include kids a little bit more on what their college plans are. So we'll keep working towards that. These, down here, the number of students who go on, I get this information from the state board website. So from their information, from 2020, we had 56 kids graduate, 19 went on to college. That's only if it's an Idaho college. Yeah, it doesn't count if,
Not a good picture.
it doesn't count if they go to the military or serve a church mission. So this one here is one, and so this here is our goal. Our goal was to have 50% go on. We're falling down to the 33 and 30. And I put over here that would have a goal of 50% again to get there. It's one of those things that I know there's been a big push at the state to say, we need everybody to go on, we need everybody to go on. If you talk to most people, no one argues against a college education, but they also will say, don't go just to go. Because there's some people that if they don't know what they're going to do, that's a great way to get yourself in debt and have a lifelong time of bondage to student debt if you're going to go and not really know what you're going to go into. But I definitely, my life's been blessed by having college education, and it is what people need to do. But this doesn't count kids who go to the military, serve a church mission. Even kids that choose to work for a year before they go in, they're going to be counted as just not going on. And so the perception of this could be the school system is failing.
Don't we have data that shows years down the road? 5 maybe.
Only if we call people,
Only if we
And-
do it.
yeah, and that's one of those things. Once that's one, I don't want to call it an issue with this requirement, is not only now are we required to help kids from kindergarten through 12th grade, help them with their academics, their social emotional, make sure they're fed, make sure they're safe, make sure they're not getting bullied, make sure they have all this. Now let's track them for 2 or 3 to 4 to 5 years after they're in college, so we can report back to prove that we've done our job. it's the same thing. It's parents have choices. Parents recognize that when kids become teenagers, that the teenagers have a mind of their own, and they're gonna be able to choose and do their own things as
Well, it
well.
looks like a good idea to put, does this include like a trade school?
I don't know if it does. I think it's just the state schools.
So it's skewed in a way because it's
Yes.
not all inclusive.
Yeah.
So if I go to become an electrician and I'm a
That
journeyman,
certainly should be on here
but it's not.
some way.
It would be nice, but then who does it? How do you do it? Where do you get the number? So by law, we have to report at least the number we have. But one can see how this type of information, and I don't know, it might be a little bit higher if you take those other kids and say, maybe it's 35 out of 56. But maybe those others that do no college at all, there's some people that have, some might say, oh, working in the oil fields is bad, but some people make a good living that way. And, it's just, it is what it is. It doesn't mean everybody has to go the path and become an engineer. Everybody doesn't have to be a doctor. Everybody doesn't have to be a lawyer. And it's okay. I think you just have to be careful with what that data looks like. And some could look at it and say, you guys are failing everybody because only 33.9% of your kids went to college. But some are doing some wonderful things as missionary or servicemen or women, those are experiences that really can benefit somebody.
And a lot of them come back and go to school, so it doesn't really show.
No. Now that was one where I know my previous district, there was a high percentage that would either do a church mission or military. And it was ones where they had high numbers of academics and kids, and then they look at this and say, wow, you guys are a horrible district because your kids are going to college. It's just the way that it's tracked. So this one here again is the state metric. The district metric, we just need to choose one. We are looking at the students that complete the FAFSA, and we were hoping that 40 kids completed it, only 18. We're hoping to at least increase this because the idea is if kids will complete the FAFSA, they'll put an application in, they'll go forward. It's one of these that the information is there to help the kids. It's just one of the things that you just have to jump into it. It's section 6. It's just a narrative. Like I kind of mentioned this a little bit, that a bright spot was our 6th grade ELA scores. We recognize that our math scores are down just a little bit. We do have some professional development in that area. The district measures for section 3 were positive, where 71% of the students met the grade level benchmarks. And 71%, somebody might say, oh, that's awful. But these are really specific skills for the foundational skills. Of course, we want them to be at 100, but we have to remember, we don't just give up after 1 year. If a kid doesn't get it in kindergarten, we're going to continue to help with these all the way through the elementary with our foundational skills on those grade levels. So that was just a narrative that I put in there. We'll continue to provide the interventions and have our grade level teams meet in their data meetings. Section 7 was optional. So that's what I put. Another new part is staff performance report. And again, this falls under the guidelines of the factor of the N size being 5 or less. And this is where we will use our 95% screener, but we're looking for K through 4 to have that measure be 75%. And then 5 through 12, we're looking at pre and post tests and wanting our students to be able to have at least 75% of the students meeting that after pre and post tests. A lot of these new parts that are added to the continuous improvement plan come about because of conversation and legislation about the career ladder. If we're going to increase teacher pay, we need to increase accountability. If we're going to increase accountability, how are we going to track it? How are we gonna make sure that the superintendents will do their jobs and make sure that these things are being monitored? The philosophical thought behind that is, yeah, you need to have accountability with it. If we were producing a product like ice cream or building buildings, we would be able to really fine tune the machine and say, we have the best ice cream because everything's gonna be perfect before we mix it in and come. If we are going to be building buildings, we're gonna wanna make sure all of our lumber is straight. We don't have anything that got rained on. We don't have anything, and we'll make it straight. The tricky part in education is, how do you look at individual kids and students with their ability to grow? We don't all come from the same home. We don't all come from the same background. Some kids have had trauma in their lives. Some kids have had heartache, divorces, loss of, deaths of parents, foster care, different things. Those kids are coming in with a lot of things that don't make it easy to learn. Then you bring in, some of us are born with different capacities to learn. Does that mean that the school is failing them? And that's where, when we look at metrics, I bring that up, we just make sure that we recognize there's more to defining education and the success of what an education is, more than a test score that we're able to show. And I've appreciated our school board, because I feel passionately about that somebody might learn differently, and what they take away from a class changes their life, even though they might have gotten a B or a C, or maybe they just barely passed the class. But maybe that's because they were working 2 jobs at night to help the parents pay for stuff, and that's the only thing that they can do. And so I'm sensitive to our teachers. I want to protect our teachers, but I also want to find that balance between how can we help our teachers continue to learn and grow. It goes back to our PLC model. It goes back to what we're doing in our school, more so than these measures here. But we will continue to do these measures. I'm not going to say they're completely irrelevant, but I think we look at them for what they are. They're a measure to give us one set of guidelines, but they're not the be all end all. And I take, I don't want to say I'm offended by that, but it's offensive when people who haven't worked in schools will come out and say, how can you say your school is a great school when your ISAT scores are so bad? Well, how many people are going for a job interview and say, hey, my ISAT scores are awesome, you need to hire me? Nobody. There's not one college that says, I'm not letting you in because your ISAT score was low. Not one college anywhere, ever.
And yet at the same time, we want them to do their
We would love it.
best.
We would love it, but part of it is because the media will take that score because it's available as a public record.
Right.
And they'll plan it and they'll say, West Jefferson was here, and
Yeah.
wow, look at these other 2A schools that are so much further above them. It's almost like the parent that's going, I need my kid to be doing this and this and this and this, just so I can look good for this parent over here to see how awesome my kids are doing.
And I was hoping that our blended learning would help to increase. I'd like to see some kind of data on that.
Increase,
In the future.
increase what? What's
to
your
help
question?
Our kids to do better in the classroom and in tests. Maybe that's not possible. To learn the idea so that they can do better on tests, to get the concepts in the classroom.
So one
And if
teacher,
they didn't get it, then they can come and get more individualized help on the blended learning.
so one way that is starting to happen, not in all classes, but with one teacher that I've talked with, as the students know exactly what they're working on for the skill that they're trying to get, they know that they need to work hard to get that. That's where the traditional method of teaching has a disconnect. And every single one of us sitting at this table, we're taught under the traditional method. And you sit in a lecture, you go through the the unit. And at the end, we're given a unit test that kind of just covers all of the main parts. And those are all standards. They're all standards based. But I know that if I get 8 out of 10, then I get through with a B. If I get 9 out of 10, I get an A. You know, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I
That you learned it.
learned it.
Right. Or that
Doesn't,
you'll retain it.
or that I'll retain it. And that doesn't mean that I am going to be successful as a worker or successful as but the one thing about standards based with this teacher, when I visited with her, she knows that she can go back and give feedback to the student and say, this is why you scored what you did. I need you to go back and show me something where you can get from this part of the rubric to this part. And be specific. Some of our classes are a little bit easier to do that. But I know what you mean, Nedra, because we want our kids to achieve. We want them to work hard. And I think those kids that naturally do that, or maybe their family circumstance allows them to really push and show that academics are important, they're going to be successful no matter where they're at. But there's a disconnect with the kids don't have that support. If our teachers are teaching the way that I'm explaining, it will be helpful for them. And it's almost like
That's what I'm hoping.
it's like a skill base, like this is, and how do we get that mindset away from, what do I need to do just to get the grade? Like, just give me my grade. You know, it's almost like if I took the approach of my job and my paycheck was dependent on whether or not I completed this. And my mindset was, well, just tell me what I need to do to get my paycheck. Like, what type of employee would I be? I would be, and you look at me going, all right, you're only doing it for your paycheck. And granted, we all have to work for money, but we hope that we have students or employees that are like, I love this. I love what I'm doing. What can I do to make this better? How do I learn this? And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. Maybe tennis has the answer.
They love it when they learn it, when they can learn it.
When they can learn it.
It's those kids that don't seem to be able to learn it or aren't trying, that don't like it.
Yeah.
So on those blended learning days, I had hoped that these kinds of kids would come in and get some one-on-one and maybe,
That's what we're hoping for.
right. and
We'll
maybe that would
see.
help. I would like to see, but I don't know how we can ever tell if that's working or not.
I think there's just the observation data that our teachers will be able to look at and see initially. But that's another part, coming back to this conversation on these metrics and how we gauge what really truly is education. How do we know, and how do you put a price tag on what somebody learns, those things that you really take away from a class, or you really take away from that? And what might be more important for one person doesn't really matter to another person. So does that mean that you failed the one and you did the
Maybe
other?
what we need to see are the true grades, not just the LSAT tests, or we need to see how they're really doing.
Well, that's why colleges usually look at GPA as their main. It gives you 4 years of looking what a history of a student to see how hard whether they know it or not. If their grades are high, that can be determined because they're either really, really smart and don't have to work, or they're not as academically gifted, but they work really hard. You know, that's, I don't know. But that's all I have for any other thoughts or suggestions on the continuous improvement plan? I'm excited to combine the two together. We'll make it a little bit easier on our side, so I'm not saying, okay, now it's continuous, now it's strategic. I thought about renaming it to the Strategic Improvement Continuous Plan.
I like it.
So we just need a motion to approve those updates.
Just approve the continuous improvement plan for this year. And it's just a yearly, the board needs to review, even though we will review it periodically. It's just one of those that board motion needs to have to prove that we're on the right track and keep going with what we're doing.
Okay. The floor be open for that motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the continuous improvement and the strategic plan for 2021-22.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have to make a previous amendment. May I be excused?
Okay.
Sorry for reading, but thank you.
All right. We'll move on to ESSER spending.
Okay, so action item for the ARP, we've talked about this again since July. One of the conditions of receiving the ARP ESSER funding for our district is to have a use of funds plan. This template was provided by the State Department and it has all the different requirements that are outlined in the federal law for us to be able to have that. Our district's been fortunate to receive these allocations. Each allocation has had specific spending requirements, guidelines, and spending timelines. And some of these allocations have been the governor's allocation or the blended learning. That was actually split into 3 different things that needed to be spent. The CARES Act, also known as ESSER 1, the SRSA Act, also known as ESSER 2, and the ARP Act, also known as ESSER 3. So this is just to bring everybody back to an understanding of what all of the different things that we had. And I want this to be, as people are coming in and looking at that, I know that when we approved the bond, and I appreciate, I think it was Mrs. Perkins that you mentioned, we need to make sure that we reiterate that these funds can't be used to replace the bond, or these things can't be used to replace the supplemental levy or other things, because on the outside looking in, it appears, and the media will say districts are flush with money. We have some money that needs to be spent, and there could be extra, but there's other things that are other issues that come into it that's not really all there that we think it is. So I put just in this next paragraph, in the past legislation, well, let me just talk about the ESSER one. So the CARES Act stuff had to be spent by December 2020. That's completely spent. Most of that, the 2 main things that went into were our interactive TVs that went into all of the classrooms for the blended learning. And then we were able to give a COVID allocation stipend to our teachers. So that's where a majority of the ESSER 1 is completely gone. And that's really all we could have spent it on. We could have bought a bazillion masks if we wanted to. And had like we could have, those are the things, like we either buy masks or we can buy some TVs for blended learning. Guess what we're gonna have? Guess we're still here. You know, the TVs are still here. And so we wanted to look at something that is long lasting and not just there. The other thing that we want to keep in mind as we're doing this is we don't want to create something that when this money runs out, now we're stuck with not having the ability to continue that type of a program. The ESSER 2 or the SRSA funds that came in, this is where there was more flexibility for districts to spend, but this is where also the legislative session, it was decided to cut the discretionary funding from the districts. And so that was where nearly $300,000 was cut from our discretionary funding. And now we're going, okay, so we have all this money coming in. Media comes and says from the outside, you guys have just got $200,000. But what they're also not saying is, surprise, surprise, we cut your money also, which from the outside, they say, well, how are you going to spend it? Well, we don't have the money to pay for insurance now because you took our discretionary money. Of course, we're going to use that ESSER 2 money to pay for insurance. And that's what we're doing with the ESSER 2. 51% of that was for last year's fiscal year. And then the 49% will come for this year's fiscal year, if that makes sense. So because of that, if the legislator wouldn't have gone in and cut discretionary funding, we could be sitting here having a conversation on how are we going to use this entire amount for however we want to in our district. But now our hands were forced to say, I guess in reality, we still have the choice. We don't have to use it to backfill, but we have to pay our bills, so we will. And so,
Great choice.
no, we don't have a choice. And so our hand was forced into doing that. So we will have the remaining 49% of the ESSER two amount that will come into it. ESSER two does have a lot of flexibility. We can use it for things like backfilling that money. So operational costs like paying for insurance could be used. That's one way that we might be able to allow for things to be spent in other areas. And so there will be, the districts are going to have some, I guess, some cushion when they have it, but that cushion, we don't know what it looks like because we don't know what we're gonna be cut back on. And so one of the reasons why that 49%, and I put this in the last sentence here, is when we went to our end of year financial roadshow from the State Department, some of the laws that were passed late in the legislative session, late April, early May, indicated that some of the safety nets for districts would be taken away for 2 or 3 years which matches the time that we are eligible to have this type of funding. Last year, we were funded through enrollment, and that was beneficial for us because we had full enrollment, even though we had kids that were staying home because of sickness. And this year, the law went back to average daily attendance. Our attendance in our schools is lower, partly because we've asked kids, if you're sick, stay home. We don't want to be spreading COVID. We don't want to do that. Our district's not as low as some of the others. Other parts of the state have really low ADA, but the difference between a 95% enrollment and 90% enrollment is probably equivalent to 1.5 teachers in our district. Yeah, it is super, super significant.
Yes.
And so you can see why districts and schools are a little cautious about this. And this might be a plug for our board to possibly consider through the Idaho School Boards Association, looking and saying, maybe we need to look at enrollment funding just to keep things clear, because we're required to put together a budget generally in April and May, but we still don't have all of the puzzle pieces together until after this current fiscal year is over. So we are going in blind to this year. So that's where they're coming in and saying, you may not want to take your remaining 49% from the ESSERs or others and just buy a bazillion masks right now. You might want to hold on to it.
But when's the deadline to spend it?
So we have until 23.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's 23, it's 23 for ESSER 2 and 24, September of 24 for ESSER 3. So, but it's pushed back, but it's almost, it just makes it difficult. I want to illustrate that just so people don't think, well, why are you holding on this? Because people could go in and look at different districts and say, wow, look at the current balance you guys have in your district. Boom, it's tremendous. But part of it's because we don't know, we haven't been guaranteed what our current year's discretionary money is going to be. And so I think our board understands that, but again, I'm sharing that for anybody listening out there. Then moving to the third ARP ESSER 3 allocations, and this is where the spending plan comes into place. That 20% of that is required to be used towards learning loss. And so the others will have other operational or things that are available. So part of this is we can come up with plans as we move forward on how these funds, they really will bless our district. And we're trying to find ways that they can have a long-lasting impact for not just right now, but for future years as well. I think we did that with our decision on the blended learning, where the board approved the screens that will allow for, potential home and school ones. I also really support and appreciate the board recognizing that in-person learning has to be our main priority, but this just allows us to have a backup plan if that were the case. So going to our plan. I'll move through this quickly. I've highlighted the areas that are our responses. Each number, this would be what is required in the federal laws. As upon approval, we'll put this on our website, which will meet that requirement. The process, we've talked with supervisors, board of trustees, parents, patrons, students. These are the times that we've had this discussion on our agendas. Describe how the funds will be used to mitigate strategies for COVID, for in-person learning. You know, these funds could be used for PPE equipment. I talked about the bazillion masks, supplies, and materials. Could also be used for things like HVAC, filters, windows, doors, ventilation, water fountains, audio systems, to allow for audio instruction with masks on. Those are things that this could be utilized for. Just depends on the direction that we want to. COVID-19 related costs for maintaining operations. Number 3, here's a 20% for the learning loss. Different things that they just have in state or federal code. But what we're going to say is additional learning opportunities will be provided for students. These will include but not limited to before and after school tutoring, Saturday school, support for credit recovery, summer learning opportunities, as well as curricula and support resources, whether that's materials or technology. These are things that do show, you know, that are research-based, that can help provide that. Again, we don't have to go into the exact details of this plan to say that, oh, before and after school tutoring is from 7 to 8 and happens here. We are providing this already. We could just increase it, is what we would do. Number 4 is how the remaining funds will be spent. I guess that's, they meant remaining after the discretionary money's cut. I don't know on that with each section, but also identify how they will be allocated to the different schools. So I answered that first one first. Our small rural district has approximately 360 students pre-K through 12, with one remote rural elementary, which is Hamer. And we are a rural elementary. It's kind of hard to say rural when you've been talking for 2 hours. But Hamer is remote, which does, again, allows them to receive a little bit of extra funding from the state because of the remote allocation on them. And we are going to allocate the funding, not just based on the numbers. So we wouldn't come in and say, yeah, this is your piece of the pie, this is your piece of the pie. We're going to prioritize it at risk of the students, the faculty, or the needs that will come. So those change. And I think they change so quickly, it's so difficult to say, this is exactly how we'll do it. The remaining funds may be spent on, but not limited to. And there was a resource that I have, a COVID relief playbook, smart strategies for investing federal funding. And in those strategies, they talk about mentoring, combating absenteeism, home visits, community collaborations, teacher mindset training, teacher bonuses, high quality curricula, student motivations. These are all things that have been tried to say, okay, what can we do to increase motivation, increase learning loss, school-based health services. Some of these things that we've already invested in with the previous ESSER funding can be continued with ESSER 3. So I'm just including those. Some of these strategies you see that we've used with the previous funding, but I'm just including it in the plan that will give us the flexibility of being able to do that. In number 5, this talks about the mental health aspects of all students. And it differentiates with all the different subgroups of low income, students of color, English learners. This is for all students, even though they differentiate that there, what we do is for all of our students. And we have, we've extended the mental health support by contracting with our certified mental health clinician. Additional training, we're having that training tomorrow, will continue throughout. Number 6 talks about that we're using our standards-based curriculum. This is asking, how are you going to monitor it? And it goes back to your question. These are the things that we do to monitor our progress anyway, pre-test, post-test, the ISAT, interim assessments, the short interim curriculum assessment, Idaho Reading Indicator, iStation, foundational screeners, the ISGA for kindergarten. So there's just putting what we're already doing. We're not reinventing the wheel with this one. These measures and the data will be used to determine interventions and appropriate supports for students. These assurances are just meaning that this is as correct as far as we, to our knowledge, to be true and correct, that we've engaged in meaningful conversation, that we've consulted with different groups. The plan is in an understandable format. I think it's pretty understandable, trying to keep it really, really clear, and that we'll put it on our website. And that's what we have for the plan. So any other suggestions or things that, I guess we will have to vote on this because it will need to go on our website as well, and I'll submit it. And maybe if you have any thoughts, because
I
these
was
were.
reading through that, I remember hearing or reading something about hiring other staff.
Mhm.
Um,
And that could be, and that's one of those where,
You'd have to be careful about that because
yes,
you don't know how long you're gonna get these funds.
Yeah.
So just
We
a
could-
one-time thing.
and that's the other thing, is we could increase staff time, but then do we say, okay, you're used to making this much, now in a couple of years, when you bring it back, it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's a balancing
You have
act,
to Be careful about that.
balancing act with them. I feel good about the different ideas that have come up from the different groups. I really do feel like we've taken the time to discuss this. It's not just a hoop that we're jumping through. When I met with the student council group, it was, I asked them, because we're talking about COVID and our plans, and they felt like the hardest subject during the remote learnings was math, just because they felt disconnected from being able to ask that question and get an answer, ask that question and get an answer. Some of the other subjects, they're like, oh, it was okay. Some of the teachers in other subjects was a little bit easier to be able to help teach that. But from that group of students, and these were the leadership group, they appreciate where we're at. I don't know if appreciate is the right word. I put appreciate in there, but they don't feel like we need to go stricter with anything as it pertains to COVID. They feel like it's a choice. One of the students came out and just said, this isn't going to go away. It's going to be here. And that's consistent with what I've heard from Eastern Idaho Public Health. They're like, we need to learn to live with it. Is what one of the students said. And so it's one of those things that I asked them, could we do more with opportunities? I think the biggest thing our students do take advantage of are either the credit recovery options or going to the before and after school tutoring with Mrs. Bell. Those are the things I think that a majority of the students, they liked that. One idea that came up, I didn't know the answer to, but we could still do it with this plan, is could we look at having students become tutors? So I'm a senior, I can come to the school and help as a part-time job, helping with a younger classman. Again, they wouldn't be able to do it outside of school, but if they did it in the school setting.
I know those kids that go to sports miss that chance too.
They do, but it's available in the morning.
It's
And
available. in the
it is available in the morning. If you drive by here, Mrs. Bell's usually here by 7 o'clock, her lights on. She's awesome.
Well, the floor would be open for a motion to approve the ARP and SR 2 and 3 spending plan.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the ARPS or spending plan.
Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed?
Madam Chair, just a point of understanding, when we go down to 3 members, are you required to vote as well?
I just to be safe, I'll say aye. In favor.
Okay. Yeah,
I think she would only have to vote if they were against each other.
okay.
They don't have to have that joint.
Yeah, you're representing the quorum, so you would.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, we'll move on to the Jewel lawsuit.
So this is one just as an opportunity to join an action lawsuit versus Jewel Labs. Our district attorney reached out to not only our district, but to the districts across the state. And at my last superintendent meeting, I should say a majority of the districts in our region are going to enter into this or have already. So what it is when the attorney called us and just shared the information that vaping is a national and even a local problem. When I say problem, it's one of those that it's here, but it's so undetectable. It's so difficult for us to determine which kids are, which kids aren't. Generally what happens is students will start talking amongst themselves. It gets out to parents and say, oh, there's so much vaping going on down there. And of course we want to stop kids from doing this. Of course we don't want them doing it. How intrusive do you want us to get? You know, and would you support us just following kids around? You know, you don't want that. But what this lawsuit is about is they recognize that there's a problem and they feel like the Juul, which is a major vaping industry, is targeting the teenage kids and creating products in a way that are creating kids to get addicted at this age, because that's going to keep them in business for years to come. The research doesn't show that adults are getting addicted to these items. It happens when they're in teenage years, and then they continuously use that. So what this action lawsuit really entails is it's asking us if we want to put our name in with a group of districts to be on the list to say, we recognize this is a problem and something needs to be done about it. And really the financial payout that would be available that seek is we as a district to put in vape detection, vaping monitors, other types of things, it costs us money. And we would have never have had to have done this unless we feel like there was an intrusion on this company to prey on underage students. And so I think it's worth it just to be able to make a statement, make a stand that this is a problem. We recognize that some kids are doing this. I wish there was something more we could do as a district, not to help catch them and punish them, but to help catch them and say, parents, this is what we found. This is what's going on. Please work with us. Let's help your kid be able to get over this. And that's what we want to do. Like throwing a punishment at, again, it goes back to the teenagers. You tell a kid not to, they're going to. But hopefully it's going to allow us to be able to, you know, if the lawsuit does turn out favorable towards districts, maybe we would be able to get vape detectors in the school free of charge because we joined this. What will be required of us is I will, if the board chooses to want to do this, I will be required to fill out some paperwork, some surveys that we send to the lawyer. The lawyer will put that in as part of the lawsuit. And so really this is just creating some extra work for me, but I'm willing to do it as a superintendent. I feel like it's something that we want to keep our kids safe. I don't know what else we can do. It's just, this is a stand that we could have against a company that, you know, you look at the different vaping devices, the flavors, it's for kids. They're trying to get kids to do it.
Is this a big, do we know what kind of a payout?
No,
No idea.
no idea.
And is the law firm taking this on a contingency fee basis where
Yes,
if they're awarded, then they get paid? So we don't actually have to pay for
we
that.
wouldn't have
legal
to,
services.
we wouldn't have to pay for anything on this.
And they only take 30% instead of 40 like they usually do, right?
I don't know.
I read that.
Yeah, I can't remember I have a lot of numbers, but it's something where I know that they feel strongly about this as well.
It's really not a downside for us.
No, the only downside
Other
would
than for
be
you.
the time that at the district level with that. So,
Does this show up in a drug test, some of the drug testing that we do?
no, it does not. No, it does not. And most of it, I think that there are oils and things with the vapes that I think the THC or the marijuana oil may, the nicotine won't. And that's the whole thing is that, and especially with Juul there was one conference I went to and they were talking about the potency of the Juul vape. And no longer is it like you have to, you're smoking 2 or 3 cigarettes in one, not cigarettes, packs. Like when you have 1 pack of cigarettes, you'd have to get 3 packs of cigarettes in to get the equivalency. So it's, you look at the level of it, and that's why the addiction level gets hit so fast. And, you know, and we all know individuals that have tried to quit nicotine, and we've heard that nicotine is one of the hardest things to overcome. And that's the sad part is you get kids at a time where they're not thinking, honestly, their brains aren't developed yet. So let's give them a test and get their score. But it is, there's the frontal lobes aren't in yet. That's why I really think, you know, laws are pushing to say vaping shouldn't take place until after 21. You just wait till kids are older to make that decision. If that's a decision you make when you're an adult, you know, support that. But when you're a kid here at our school, this is what we want to make sure we can do.
Board be open for a motion to join the action lawsuit.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we join the action lawsuit proposal.
I think if you read the because I have that right there, you can say that the board take
all necessary steps to join this lawsuit as a plaintiff against Juul, and to direct the superintendent to execute all appropriate documents to that end.
Right, is there a second? Second. We'll do a roll call. vote. Mrs. Ruby? Aye. Mrs. Cherry? Aye. Mrs. Perkins?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Policy 5000.
Okay, this is, I don't know if we'll take a lot of time on this one here. I think it's just more for information, especially since we have 2 board members that are absent. We've included the ones that have been edited so far as we've looked at that. I think it's gonna take us a couple more board meetings probably to get through all this. We have so much going on. Unless there's anybody else that had something they wanted to point out today. I don't have anything specific besides these. Okay. We'll move on if that's okay.
Sounds good. Return to school plan.
Again, this is just an opportunity for us to give feedback. As I've talked with the different parent groups at POM meeting with the return to school plan, overall, parents want to be in school. Some of the questions are coming up as how many students are having COVID right now. We've had a lot of sickness in the school, but we've also had a lot of negative tests to COVID. Right now for today, there are in the high school 3 positive cases and 1 in quarantine. And at the elementary level, we have 1 positive case for all the students. But we're not seeing it at this point. They're different. When I look at the different groups, they're not all in the same circle. And so we know that it's in our community. We know that a lot of times the quarantine is taking place because the cases are coming from home. With the positive cases, it's somebody at the house had it, and that's what's going on. Could somebody be getting it here at school? Possibly. If we close down the school, if we close down everything else, the kids are still going to hang out. The community is not going to shut down, and I think we're taking the steps that we have. It's kind of like when I mentioned to the students when they said this isn't going to go away. They might have heard their parents talking about that. I heard that from my discussion with the superintendent meeting. COVID is going to be a new seasonal flu. And like all flus, there's going to be a peak period and a decrease period. And individuals have the choice to get vaccines. Just as a point of information, schools are exempt from the executive order of the 100 employees. I know we have 104 employees. I'm not gonna go out and try to fire 5 of them to make sure we're under it. We don't have to. Just make sure nobody's listening to that, 'cause but schools are exempt from that. We're gonna keep the same process going. We're gonna educate, make your decision. I was vaccinated. I'm gonna vaccinate my family, but that's my choice, but I'm not going to judge somebody who chooses not to. And it's one of those things that they are finding that if you do get vaccinated, you still can get COVID. It might not be as severe, but it's going to be a risk that we take as a community. And parents that are concerned about that, we have online options here at the school. We'd love you to still stay part of West Jefferson School District. We can sign students up to be part of IDLA, where they can take their core classes at home. There's still a teacher that will work with them. That will allow your students to still come and take art classes or PE classes or something like that, because they're a West Jefferson student, and we'll take care of, they'll be able to use our Chromebooks, they'll be able to do all of that. So I just wanted to open that up. I guess the question that came up about the return to school plan is, how do we know when it's bad that we need to make a change? And I don't know if the other school districts are doing what we're doing. They're moving forward. At this point, I think we still just have to trust parents. If your kids are sick and you feel like it, COVID symptoms are similar to a lot of these others. We've had people that could have sworn that they had COVID when got tested and it wasn't. You have others that they think they just have a mild seasonal, allergy, and it comes back as COVID. It's so difficult to know. I think we just have to do our best to continue washing our hands, using the hand sanitizer. If you are sick, keep your distance, stay home for a while, get feeling better, and come back. I think that's going to continue to work. I don't see the 3 positive cases at the high school and 1 at the elementary as an alarm. I think it's pretty consistent with what's going on in the community. So any other thoughts or questions? This is really just discussion. If we need to change a direction, or if the board would like me to move in a different direction, I just need to know that.
Forum of the board will meet on September 29th.
We have a quick 5.3.
Oh, did I skip?
Yeah.
I did. Parent-teacher
I
conference.
just wanted, I kind of highlighted this in the superintendent meeting, that we do have parent-teacher conference coming up. And we're on the 16th. That it's going to be a Monday. It's different, 8 to 6 at the schools. The blended learning days are taking place the last 4 Fridays. At our professional day tomorrow on the 17th, our teachers are going to be discussing more. Again, we don't have, I wish we had a perfect plan in place, but this is a new thing we're trying. And we want to make it good. We want to do things like what you're saying. We want to bring the kids in, give them the extra support. If they're in a lab class, whether that's welding or woodworking or chemistry or whatever, they want more time to work on stuff, that's a perfect time.
Or the teacher wants them.
Or the teacher wants them.
Right.
Yep, and the teachers they know that. The teachers know that they need to bring the kids in, that we're working on that. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that it's a positive thing. As with all things that are new, there's a potential for something to not work right. When I was talking with the student council yesterday, they were asking about, well, what does this look like? How, why are we doing it this way? And I asked them to say, you guys can help us make this better, or one way or another. Your feedback is going to be helpful to us. And so it's one of the things that's what we should be doing as a school. We shouldn't just be telling kids, we know what's best every single time. I know Bonneville really liked it, or they do like that they have their half-day Monday option with that. I'm optimistic that this will be a good thing, and if not, I'm optimistic we can make the changes to get there. I didn't mention with the attendance, we're really wanting to find a balance between telling kids stay home if you're sick, but we still want you at school because we still have ADA that are required for funding. We do have Saturday school options. Mr. Davis did say that he wants to have Saturday school the last 3 Fridays of each trimester. Those are available for 2 ways. One, if kids, it could be used as a disciplinary thing, but it also could be used as a way for kids to make up attendance, things that they've missed. We just wanted to have it consistent out there so parents can know the last 3 Fridays, last 3 Saturdays will be reserved for Saturday school. So there'll be 9 different opportunities for that. So we're doing all we can to try to help kids to still have a high standard of, we need you here, we'll work with you. I explained to the students at the student council that 90% attendance means 5 days that you can miss. They said, well, what if I'm sick for 5 of them? Well, guess what? Yeah, you're sick for 5 of them and you're good to go. But that doesn't mean that you're excused on those 5 days. And now I can take 5 more days off to go snowboarding every week because I still have my 5 days. They just realize that, oh, a day gone means I'm verified, not excused. And then if you go above that, that's called extenuating circumstances, and our administration will look at that. And if it needs to come to us as a board, then it's a little bit more clear when they come, they should know, all right, did you take those 5 days thinking that you had 5 more days you could miss later on? Like, when did you miss those 5 days? Those are things that it's going to be good for the kids, because not only academic learning, it shows that we think it's important for kids to be here, but it's also preparing them for lifelong skill of, can I show up to a job? Can I be at a job? Can I be there? So I just wanted to bring that out just as a discussion part, in case the board had questions for me or anybody watching at home. We'll have that option. And then the last one, Madam Chair, is just the ISBA regional meeting.
Okay, and I'm planning to do that here.
Yes, we'll do that here.
All right. There's no further business. The floor will be open for a motion to adjourn.
Motion that we adjourn.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for being